Hi, I'm Stephen Tallamy, and today is a very exciting day because it is the launch of the brand new piano book. Now, I've been administrating the piano book website since pretty much the beginning, so it's really exciting to be seeing a third generation where we're really focusing on the people who have made this community. So I do apologise for not really posting any videos for quite a while. Getting this new website ready, plus a whole bunch of other projects that I've been working on, has just mean I haven't had time to pick up the camera and talk to you. But I did think it would be remiss of me to launch the new piano book without adding a new sample pack of my own. So one of the things that I have been working on has been some music for some production libraries. So I thought I'd see if I could design a new synth patch using my modular equipment. So let's have a look at what's set up here on the Crave here. I've got a basic oscillator patch here that's got some rather interesting modulation going on. One of the core parts of this, I've got an LFO that is running, and this LFO is sending to the resonance of the filter, so that's going to give us a modulating sound, which will be quite interesting. Beyond that, we've got quite a long attack, so this is sort of going to fade up, go into a decay, and then I've got sustain on, so this is going to hold the note along. So all I've got here going on the patch cable is nothing complicated at the moment. To start with, I'm just going out into the mult and out back, so I get a stereo, well, mono to stereo signal just into my sound card. So the sound from this sounds a bit like this. And where it gets quite interesting is right down in the low zones here. But even if we go right up high, what I quite like about this is the unexpected second peak that you get, and it's sort of slightly random because it depends on when you hit the note and when that lines up with the LFO. So now following this patch in, so we've got the output of the Crave coming here into the clouds here. So this is going to add a little bit more of a texture to it. So we've got some pitch manipulation going on, and this is then coming out and currently going into this FX aid. But from now, I've turned that down, so we're not going to hear any of the FX aid. We're just going to hear the output of the clouds. So now let's listen to the patch now we've got that added. And if we go into the higher range, so you can hear that is adding some rather interesting overtones. But what I wanted to do was have a little bit more motion in it, so I thought I would set up an envelope using math. So what I've got here is a very basic rise and fall envelope. Let's just stick it on cycle. And so if you watch this light down here, this is the envelope that I'm going to be using. So it's quite a slow envelope. You can see it sort of just goes up and then gently comes back down again. Now what I want to do is I want to trigger this not as a cycle, but I want to trigger it from the Craves. So what I'm going to do is with this cable, this is coming out of the gate of the Crave, I'm going to put that into the trigger here. And so now with that wired up, if you see when I hit the key, it begins a very, very long envelope. So then what I've done is I've wired this back through maths just so I can use the attenuverter to modify this, and I'm going to send this into the volts per octave. So this is now going to manipulate the pitch over time. So you can hear that adjust the pitch over time. If I go into the lower range, it's a slightly more subtle effect. So let's go back to the FX aid. I'm going to just crank this right up. This is running on the shimmer patch here, so if I add it now, now I think that's a bit much. So if I go for maybe just over 50%. That gives it a really interesting feel. So I think that's about it in terms of the patch. Let's have a look at now running this into Logic and recording it down. So here is my Logic project, pretty straightforward. I've just got one part here that is sending out MIDI directly to the Crave, so I can now play it with my keyboard. And because of the fact that it is slightly different each time you play it, because of that LFO that's going not necessarily synced to the tempo, I thought I would record multiple round robins. So you can see here what I've done is I'm recording the same note 3 times, holding down the note for a reasonable period of time and leaving a bit of space between each one. There's an 8 bars between it. The note is actually played for 6 bars, and then there's some space for the tail of it. So 8 bars between each of the samples, and then I went through and hit record, and that then created this big long monolith file. So then what I've done, the same as any other monolith, is I've exported this out as a single file, and then I'm going to load it up in the monolith generator script to get me a contact instrument and a DS instrument. So if you've not seen my previous videos on this subject, basically I have a very simple way of turning these monoliths into instruments using some scripts that can run and create contact instruments, decent sampler instruments, and also Sforzando ones. So there'll be a link in the description below if you want to check out the full details of that. I'm just going to use it for now to build out a decent sampler instrument. This is where you can get it from, so I'll do a link to where you can download this generator code. And what I've done is I've loaded it up into a text editor. I'm quite a big fan of using VS Code for this kind of thing. It's completely free and does some nice syntax highlighting. So the previous versions of this have typically used a particular flavor of a default recording template. So we've had different variations of this ones. There was one that we had specifically when we were doing the GIMP recording. There are ones for sort of a default, ones where you're using the same pedals and so on. So the different variations of this. Now, because I haven't really gone for any recording template with this particular sample, I'm going to have to do a little bit more configuration. So in my configuration file here, you can see I've got a lot more detail here beyond the instrument and various other parts. I'm going to use this flavor called Basic. And what that does is it will pick out some defaults. Most of these are actually the defaults, but I thought I'd put them on screen to tell you exactly how you want to build the instrument. Now, a basic flavor isn't going to contain all the things like release triggers and pedal triggers that you might need from a piano sample. So we've got here configuration on the duration of the notes. If you remember, there were 8 bars between each note. I actually only want 7 bars because I don't want to have the gap between. Then the number of round robins I recorded was 3. The interval between the notes was 3, and we're starting at note 21, which is the bottom A, but I'm allowing it to go down to note 18, so that's actually below bottom A if you want to use that. By default, traditionally, it's also only limited it to the bottom A because you can't go lower than that on a piano. The number of zones is the number of different notes that I recorded, so I recorded 21 of them, and then I've just got some information about the skin. So if I type in Lua and then ds.lua, this will spit out a DS preset file, which is what we need for Decent Sampler. We can have a quick look at that here in the instruments here. So you can see here it's set out all of the sample, and it's going to go to that one sample file, but different start and end times that it's calculated from that configuration. So that's the DS preset, but probably what's most interesting is, does it work? So here we've got Decent Sampler. I'm going to drag and drop the DS preset file in, and let's give it a go. When I first created this instrument, I was thinking more about the low end and sort of a gnarly low end, so you can hear that here. But the upper end is also quite interesting, particularly because of that pitch modulation that I had on the clouds. And of course, if we combine those, we get quite a big sound. Now, one more thing I just wanted to point out, since the last time I showed these scripts, there was a really great contribution by a GitHub user, Prash, from Finland. So thanks very much for this. So one of the scripts is a splitter that splits up the WAV file into individual notes so that if you're dealing with a lower memory footprint in Contact, it can be really helpful. So you can run that now. And previously, this script used to take quite a long time. You'll see now it's done within no time at all, and we can see now in the samples directory we've got all of those individual WAV files there. So before uploading it to PianoBook, I've also adjusted the interface a little bit. I've added ADSR controls, so if you want to adjust the release time or the attack time, you can go ahead and do that directly in the Decent Sampler interface. There'll be a link in the description below for you to download this for free from pianobook.co.uk, and whilst you're there, please do leave a review because it's really helpful for the site to find out which instruments are useful to other people. If you've enjoyed this video, then please do give it a thumbs up, share and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.